the shooting range. In this episode, we compare two fighters that look suspiciously alike, the VB-1002 and the Thunderbolt, the Ouragan and the incredible story of Marcel Bloch. Hotline. The developers answer questions that you've left in the comments. But first, let's start with the amazing SO4050 Vautour IIA and how to use it. Last time we told you the story of this top-tier French bomber. Today, we take a more practical approach. Let's see how to fly this thing. A small disclaimer, you can't use this beast in mixed battles. Yet. But one day. Okay, what do we have here? Amazing max speed, less than impressive maneuverability, and a lavish array of bombs and rockets to choose from. Basically, everything you'd expect from a typical post-war jet bomber. But there are a few important things to consider. First, the aircraft is very heavy, especially when it carries the full load of its explosive presence. It takes a while to reach its top speed, and even at 700 kph you are still an easy target for enemy fighters and SPAAGs because of your massive size. Second, if you opted for a dive, be ready to pull up at around 700 meters or even higher to avoid turning your aircraft into an expensive pile of scrap. And don't rely on flaps in this case. When you fly at the speed of 600 kph or anything faster than that, they get torn off the very moment you decide to use them. Be very careful. Third, when people see the things this bomber can carry, they tend to immediately forget all the bad stuff. Just look at this. Want to go ham on rockets? Okay, no problem. There are 3 different types to choose from. Rockets aren't your cup of tea? Okay. Load some bombs. There are options for every taste. Want a balanced payload? Here you go. All in all, there are 19 payload options. By the way, if you like to use bombs but aren't an expert, get some 750-pound ones. You'll get quite a few of them, which means more chances to hit designated targets. If you're more of a rocket kind of guy, or gal, we suggest that you should take a look at the options that allow you to take 24 T-10-151 rockets and 76 SNAB Type 23 rockets. They are awesome. The former are great at piercing armor. They're bigger and make a bigger boom. The latter requires some precision if you fire a single rocket, but there's no need to do that, as you can shoot dozens of them. Some of them will find their targets. Just saying. These little babies are a lot of fun to use. Not enough for you? Still need more DACA? Okay. There are also 4 amazing DEFA 551 cannons that are ready to shred through most things. Planes and lightly armored SPAAGs are all easy prey, that's for sure. One last thing. Even though most payload options look great on paper, some of them will make your bomber very, very heavy. Trust us, you don't want that. Shed some weight, and you'll have much more fun flying this beast. The French aviation tree partially consists of American aircraft, but there are some French planes that are quite similar to the Americans when it comes to their class, battle rating, and purpose. We've decided to compare 2 of those aircraft, the VB-1002 and the P-47N-15. Let's begin with the French heavy fighter. It's an elegant machine with guns that shoot 9.5 kilograms of death in a second, which is more than impressive for a bird at BR 4.7. The speed is also pretty good. Furthermore, the plane can survive 800 kph, and here's where we find the problem. The engine, or to be more precise, its radiator. It doesn't work well on any map, except for the winter ones, so the engine overheats very fast during accelerated flight. It isn't very good at maneuvering, but on the other hand, it can dismantle anyone and anything in frontal attack or while boom and zooming. Now, what about the other contestant? The Thunderbolt seems to have better flying performance, even though the speed is pretty much the same. It can pull off some very fast maneuvers, especially at altitudes over 6,000 meters. Also, the whole thing doesn't fall apart even at the speed of 930 kph. But it only has 8 Brownings against 4 20mm cannons of the VB-1002, accompanied by the same Brownings. Still, the American wins this one because of a very important difference. The Thunderbolt spawns in the sky, while the French aircraft has to start the match on the ground. And now, the story of a plane that literally saved its creator. Marcel Bloch was dying. The warm sun of the Côte d'Azur seemed to be shining for everyone but him. He was a worldwide renowned aircraft designer, shareholder of a whole bunch of huge transnational corporations, a millionaire, and a hero of the recent war. He was sitting on the beach, wrapping himself up in his winter coat, and wasn't responding to the world. For him, there was only horror, cold, and darkness. He could burst into tears without reason, could accidentally fall asleep, only to awake with screams of terror. He refused to eat and drink. This was the new Marcel Bloch that was brought home from the Buchenwald concentration camp, where he was sent after he refused to cooperate with the Nazi government. That way, they decided to give him a lesson and also to ensure that he dies as slowly as possible. Well, they got what they aimed for. By the middle of 1946, Marcel Bloch was slowly dying and almost never left his bed. At the same time, the French aviation industry was quickly returning to its pre-war roots. Half-nationalized regional unions presented their first jet prototypes, and each one was worse than the previous one. They began to fight for the funds, again, and give a lot of bribes to the ministry clerks, again. Meanwhile, in other countries, the aviation technologies were booming. France, that was damaged enough by the war, couldn't survive a slip like that. This was very clear to General Charles de Gaulle, as clear as the fact that Marcel Bloch was probably the most talented aircraft designer in post-war France. So, the general came to this destroyed, half-blind man and forbade him to die, at least until he saves the République by creating a modern French military aircraft. What happened next was almost impossible. Marcel Bloch stood up, saluted, dressed up, and set out to fulfill his general's order on his stiff legs. His car hadn't even reached its destination yet, and the factory and the construction bureau walls weren't able to contain the cheers of workers, engineers, technologists, economists, and basically everyone who worked for him. They were greeting their boss back after he survived all those horrors. And no matter what he had lived through, he was going back to work. They started creating the new aircraft, the Ouragan. But Marcel Bloch was still a gravely ill man, and he couldn't manage such mental efforts. He needed to be replaced, and so Marcel Bloch became another man. He changed his surname to Dassault, honoring his brother's wartime alias. Darius Paul Dassault, born Bloch, was a French general and a hero of the resistance. Marcel Dassault was coming to work every single day, working as though each day was his last. Death wasn't an option before the work was finished. To survive, he went through several surgeries, overcame the horrible pain, started doing medical gymnastics, and worked, always worked, like crazy, until he and everyone else couldn't even move. The new plane didn't contain a single experimental idea. No surprises, only the good and tested principles for a reliable mass-produced aircraft. But the key elements and details were designed to last under enormous pressure, and if needed, they could be easily rearranged. That way, Dassault left himself enough space for future modifications. The armament was chosen to make the plane as multi-purpose as possible. There were 4 20mm cannons and a wide range of missiles and bombs. The aircraft was also easy to maintain. As for the wings, technically they were still straight, as in subsonic models, but they themselves seemed to beg to make them swept. Marcel Dassault knew he would grant his jet firstborn's request very soon. But to make a second step, he needed to complete the first one. On February the 29th, 1949, a test pilot called Konstantin Rozanov flew the MD-450 Ouragan for the first time. He was spinning in the air like crazy at the applause of the Armée de l'Air pilots, who were drooling to get these amazing planes for themselves. And Marcel Dassault was watching the test flight and couldn't even imagine that, filling General de Gaulle's order, he would live to an age of 94 years and become one of the richest men in France and the whole of Europe. The planes of the Dassault concern would pierce the supersonic speed. They would be bought all over the world and become a symbol of pride and greatness for the country that created them. The Parliament of France would stand as one every time Marcel Dassault would enter the room, and the greatest world leaders would consider an honor just to stand next to him. Both of his sons would grow up to be as talented aircraft designers and businessmen as himself, and they would carry the family business with pride. All of that was yet to come. For now, Marcel Dassault was sitting in his chair, still wrapping up in his winter coat, watching his first jet aircraft in the sky. And for the first time in years, he was smiling with joy. He loved his job more than anything, and it paid back by curing his body and soul. He had found the will to live. Get ready for the traditional last part of our show, Hotline, developers answering questions from the comments. The first question comes from FireRate233.
Will Japan get Tier 6 tanks?
It totally will, mate. We'll give more information on our site, so wait for the news. Finn Thorming and a lot of other players ask, "Hey Gaijin, will we ever see German Sturm Tigers?" It's not in our nearest plans, that's for sure. This one is quite unique, and if we decide to add it, it surely won't be suitable for the usual research procedure in the tech tree. It will probably be more useful as a part of some event, or just for the collection. We'll think about it. And then there is another popular request from Krull Patrick and others about the fate of Object 279. Hey guys, this also is not one planned for now, but maybe we will return to it later. The last question comes from Augustin Garcia. How much Begleit would Begleit Panzer Pans if a Begleit Panzer could Pans Begleits? Our scientists will start battling this problem right after they find a way to translate pans as a verb. But when that happens, we'd say it could pans all of them Begleits if it wants to. That's it for today, but feel free to write your questions in the comments below. We do read them all, and you might see some of them answered in the next episode. If you like what we're doing, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. See you on the shooting range.